What is going on, everybody? My name is Ryfrost, and today we have a big update for you in the form of a patch for Age of Empires 4. So the first 2022 patch has come out, patch 10257 or 1.0257, whatever it is. And there are some big changes, and there's going to be some changes to the meta. We're looking at differences in certain civilizations, some nerfs, some big buffs, and some overall changes, so quality of life like the scouts and the warrior monks for the roost. So let's jump right in. Alright, so we're going to go into a deep dive of this update. I'm actually really looking forward to the changes in this update because there's a few things that are going to change the meta. There's a few quality of life changes, but I also think we're going to see a complete different set of gameplay out of the pro players, and then obviously the casual players and the semi-pros, semi-casuals will also follow that, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly what we see. So first of all, we look at the matchmaking. So they've increased the pool by 67% when you look in quick search, so it's going to be a lot quicker to be able to get yourself into a game. I do find myself at certain times waiting about 2 to 3 minutes, and then when I'm on stream as well, we did spend a little bit of time waiting. But I tend to play sort of 1v1s and also up to 4v4s as well. So it gets even longer when you're searching in 4v4 because the people I play with are all different skill levels and with different scores and levels in the sense. And I think obviously it does look at the ELO when you do search for a game as well. So the fact that they're making it a lot easier to find matchups will be both good and bad because they're making it sort of looser in the sense that you're getting better, quicker matchups. You might go against somebody who is a lot better than you, and then vice versa. You might get somebody who is a lot easier than you, so you could very quickly rise up the ranks of the ELO system and only sort of get players that are really bad. Or also, you could be a semi-decent player, but you're going up against people that are really good, and you don't rise up and you do get demotivated. So it's going to be a fine balance. It's going to be interesting to see who I do match up against, and we'll find out tonight in the live stream because I'm going to be doing some games with hopefully with Adam again, and to see exactly who we go up against. So we're going to go up against pros, or we're going to go up against casuals, well, like ourselves. But big one for the whole meta in the Grand Theft Venison. Scouts now move 35% slower when carrying an animal carcass. Now this is quite a big change because the current meta, other than Abbasid, Delhi and English, or England, you don't really need to do the Grand Theft Venison. But when you obviously every other civilization tend to go down the route of professional scouts, where you can pick up animal carcasses and your villagers do stay very close to your town centre and just take the venison that the scouts drop off. And it seems to be more and more common. So the fact that they're moving 35% slower means that they will be it'll probably mean that they're the same speed as spearmen. Will be interesting to see how it works out, but they'll be definitely slower than horsemen. So you might see some changes. Instead of a massive army of scouts going up and picking up all the animal carcasses, you might actually see some horsemen mixed in there that'll be able to catch the enemy scouts just in case they have the food, and also vice versa to protect them. Now I do know that with, let's say, the Holy Roman Empire, when they have the increased foot soldiers speed, they will definitely be able to catch up to the scouts that are carrying animal carcasses. So it will be very interesting to see the whole change. Are we going to look at seeing the Grand Theft Venison completely change, or is that still going to be a thing? Let me know in the comment section down below. How different do you think this is going to change the meta? What I do know it probably will change is that I've seen people running with scouts into the enemy base and stealing all the deer from the town centre. Now, I think that might change now because they're going to be 35% slower running back, which means they're probably going to get killed. So they might not try that. So as long as you can get your venison in the base, you're pretty much okay. But it'll be very interesting to see how this works. Horseman, age 2 and age 4, or up to age 4, range damage is increased from 1 to 2. So that's going to really tie in quite nicely to the civilizations that rush, because if they're getting higher armor values on the horsemen, things like the Mongols who rush primarily with the horsemen, they'll get attacked by the town centre. They've got better armor. It might play out to be a disadvantage for some, but also it'll make them a lot stronger towards the things like longbowmen and other civilizations that go into obviously archers and things like that. So it's going to be quite interesting. Late game sort of era 4 or age 4, you might now see some horsemen mixed into the whole gameplay. instead of just seeing knights. But I think once you get past sort of the feudal age into the castle era, you're going to be wanting to pump out knights anyway. The only thing that I would see the major benefit of the horsemen is they're the only ones that can catch up to Mangudai. The knights can't, so it might play out that the horsemen are going to be a lot stronger by chasing the Mangudai. So the Mongol late game will actually play out a little bit less aggressive, and also the horse archers for the Rus, but they're not as fast because they have to stop to attack. But it will be very interesting to see the horsemen chase after those Mangudai and actually have a little bit better armour to fight against them. So this might change, and Mongols are really showing to be strong in some but weak in others. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this plays out. As you can tell by my face, I'm actually really excited by this update because this is probably going to change the entire meta. But we'll see. Now we look at some more civilization specific. So the Holy Roman Empire HRE finally get the spear wall ability correctly enabled for the spearmen. One of the biggest problems with the spearmen for HRE is that they weren't defending, they weren't bracing. I will show you. They weren't bracing. So when they were attacked by knights and horsemen, they weren't putting their spears up. So they were a massive disadvantage. And to a point where you wouldn't really actually use them because you just go straight into like crossbowmen. But it might make them a little bit stronger now in the early feudal ages because HRE really tend to sort of turtle and defend, get the relics from the for the Regnant's Cathedral, and then look at the sacred sites. So it's going to be a lot different for them probably if they do get rushed by the rush heavy civilizations. So if they get rushed by horsemen, for example, the Mongols, and that rush to HRE, now the spearmen will correctly use their abilities, and it might make them a little bit more of a threat to defend against those rushes. And also the prelate getting stuck in Spire and will no longer inspire other units. Finally, there's always been a massive problem. It's been widely reported that they'll be able to inspire, they'll get stuck on something or just nothing. If, let's say, like a villager moves away and it'll just stick, and then they won't inspire anymore, so that prelate becomes useless and they're just like, might as well just delete them. So they finally fixed that, which is absolutely fantastic. Hopefully in the future they will change up some of the landmarks to make them more useful, so it's more competitive in the sense that you can use more than one, and it's just like streamlined this, and this, and that's all you can use when you upgrade to the next era. It'd be nice to see some changes for that. But anyway, let's go back into the patch. So the Rus now finally... There's a bit of a bug, and I don't know if a lot of people know about it that don't look into it, but the horse archers for the Rus actually were bugged that they didn't fire at 2.0 speed. They actually fired at like 1.7 speed, so they were a really big threat to deal with. And you would normally find the Rus players just going two things. You'd go knights and you'd go horse archers, but then the horse archers were so strong that you could use them just on their own. It was very rare that you could find anything that would beat them. Longbowmen were okay at defeating them, but other than that, if you're not playing England, you're pretty much done for. So now they fire a little bit slower, and it is a 2.5 speed instead of a 2.0 or 1.7. So they will become less of a threat in the sense of you won't find as many Rus players getting a massive amount of horse archers and just winning the game. But also horse archers now will no longer receive additional attack speed and additional damage for the Incendiary arrows technology. So now they become less of a threat in the late game once you get the ranged defense from the blacksmith, and now you'll probably find horse archers a bit more like the Mangudai now, that they're going to run in from like the back of your town, kill some villagers, run out, and then whilst you're still fighting them in with your knights and things like that in the middle of the battle, for example, your horse archers can go around the back and kill villagers. So it'll be nice to see if that changes, or we'll have to see how it plays out in the coming weeks. Are they going to be as strong as they used to be? Who knows? But I think what we'll find with horse archers is you won't find the meta being heavy on them. Because it was literally just knights and horse archers and a couple of warrior monks, and you'd win it almost every fight. So it's going to be nice to see those changes and see what they are. And obviously the warrior monks now have got the same treatment as the scouts, that because warrior monks are on horses, it was very hard to catch up to them. You can get horsemen to catch up to them, but now because they are 25% slower, they're not as slow as scouts when carrying animal carcasses, but they are slower. So if you're at a sort of a Rus mirror match or other sort of civilizations that depend heavily on relics, like well, the English to an extent, but the HRE, now you could probably catch up with the warrior monks if they do get them before you. You can chase them off with some horsemen, and now because the horsemen are a little bit more of a threat with the ranged armor increased, it might become more of a threat, and you can't just send your warrior monks out into the battlefield on their own, pick up the relics and run back, because they will be slower than the knights and horsemen. So that will change the meta as well. It seems like they are changing one of the most popular things that everybody seems to complain about. So I am glad that they're changing these things. And now we look at the Mongols. So the Mongols are currently probably the most hated civilization in the game right now. And I did a video just recently, I'll put it up in the, whichever one it is, the cards, about they're very heavy on the rush. And because they get stables at before the feudal age, you can rush with double horseman spam and kill almost every single villager if the enemy isn't careful and micromanaging. And that is because one of the biggest benefits that Mongols had is they have higher wood to start with than any other civilization. Because they don't have to build houses, they're at a massive advantage. So that wood can be then put into the Ovoo, as I've been corrected, not an Ovoo, or Ovoo, and then straight into a stables, and they just rush off. And also because they start with 50, because they don't have to build a house and have to spend that 50 wood straight off the bat to increase the population, they can put that also to the tower rush, which is one of the two biggest things in this game that people hate with the Mongol meta. It is tower rush and horseman spam and harass early on within sort of 4 or 5 minutes. In the video I made someone quit within 7 minutes because I rushed in with horsemen and towers before they'd even really started. So the fact that they are now starting with less wood will make it not as of a threat, because you tend to put all your villagers on wood at the very beginning anyway, because you want to be going for that heavy spam. But it will set them back by about 20 seconds. Now in the casual game, 20 or 30 seconds isn't that much. But in the professional games, that is a hell of a lot to start building a barracks and some spearmen and get yourself prepared, ready for the rush. Because when you're playing against Mongols, you expect to get rushed. So them starting with 50 less wood will really slow them down, and they're not going to be able to put that extra bit into a tower. They're going to have to really manage the resource. Do they want a stables or do they want a tower? And now because their other nerf is the outposts, or towers as I call them, now cost 100 wood instead of 70, that also then makes it a big difference for them to say, okay, I'm starting with 50 less wood and I need to spend 30 more wood on a tower. How am I going to do this? So when you first start the game, you can either send your villager off to do a tower, that's all their wood gone. You build an Ovoo, and then stables, you've got no wood. So you really then have to manage where you want to be putting your villagers and which sort of rush do you want to do. So this is going to be a massive change to the Mongol meta, because it's going to really change how they really manage. And you'll probably find one or two things. The tower or outpost spam is going to stop and you'll just get horseman spam, or the tower spam will still be there and you'll get fewer horsemen chasing after you. The update comes out this evening as of this video, so I'm going to be testing it out on my stream at 7 PM UTC to see exactly, because Mongols were one of my favourite civilizations, so it'll be quite interesting to see how they play out. But not also do the Mongols get the 2 nerfs on the wood, decreased, and also outposts costing more. Now they finally can't own multiple Ovoos at the same time. Now I actually recently played a game with a friend where we were against somebody that had 6 Ovoos out, and you generally don't see it. You generally don't see it in the 1v1 meta. You only see it in sort of 2v2, 3v3, and 4v4 games, because it's a lot harder to do, because it's only 1v1. You really need to manage. Right, am I going to put an Ovoo down, and I'm going to put another Ovoo down, or am I going to start building defenses? Whereas in a 2v2 game, it's very different in the sense that you don't get rushed quite often, so you can spend the extra time to really glitch it out. So finally they fixed that exploit. But finally, and also the Cagnate Palace can now be packed correctly. I've never really bumped into that issue before, but now they can actually move up and go away, because one of the biggest benefits of Mongols is that you can pack up everything and move somewhere else. So if you have one landmark that you can't move, you are at a massive disadvantage because you can't run away. You can run away, but you leave that one landmark to be left on their own. But some massive changes for the Mongols. Is it going to stay S tier? Probably. It'll just mean that it'll be less of a rush tactic and more of a people deciding to sort of really wonder about which way they want to go at the very beginning of the game. Now what I will think it might change is, because it was so easy to rush as the Mongols, you might find some players that are in higher ELO rankings that maybe don't belong there, but they've got there just because they've been Mongol spamming. You might find you'll be going against some people that do play Mongols that aren't as much of a threat as they used to be, because they can only do that. And if they do end up moving over to a different civilization because the Mongols aren't the S tier anymore, you might find you go against some people that aren't as good as their ranking system says they are. So we'll have to figure out how that plays out. Am I worried about it? Not so much, because it is only 50 wood and an extra 30 wood to deal with. And if you do upgrade like better broad axes and chopping wood quicker, you might not come into an issue. But what it will do is it will delay the sort of pre 10-minute wins by the Mongol players, because they'll have to decide, am I going to go harass with Horseman, which can be very easily dealt with, or am I going to harass with towers, but I won't be able to do as much Horseman as I used to be. So we'll see how that plays out. But anyway, that's enough for talking about the Mongols. But for me, I think this is the highlight for me. And there's also a Chinese update later on, but we'll go into that. Big changes for the Dehli. Now, I think potentially the Dehli might become a really big force to be reckoned. They are getting some massive upgrades to their biggest flaw, which is the technology. So first and foremost, Spearmen can now do the Spear Wall ability, very similar to the Holy Roman Empires. It was bugged, now it's fixed. There was a bug with the keep tech times, are no longer increased while in influence of a mosque. What you could do is you can stick, so obviously with the Dehli, with Dehli meta, every upgrade that you go down, if it's in the sort of influence of a mosque, and if it has monks in there, it will increase the speed of technology. Another thing, the keep tech times are no longer increased while in the influence of a mosque. Now, there were some funny things happening where you put a mosque next to a keep, and it did increase that speed. So the fact that that's not happening now will make it a lot easier for players, that they won't be able to bug that out. Piety-based research time reduced from 600 seconds to 135 seconds. Now, that is very big. One of the biggest things about Dehli is there are certain upgrades that you don't go for because they take too long, and you don't really bother with them. And in certain areas, and there's certain sort of technologies that are meant for like the castle era or the feudal era, and by the time you get to the next era, that has only just finished upgrading, so you don't really get the benefit from them. Piety is one of them, and it's going to be really interesting to see now the fact that you can upgrade things for the era that you're supposed to be in. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And then also, explosive base research time increased. So they've actually got a nerf on certain things, but also a buff on a lot of technologies. So what you tend to get now, because the way that Dehli works, the more mosques you have and the more monks you have in the mosques, it reduces the time. So what you'll find in the Imperial Age for Dehli, the explosive base research and chaser cannons base research, they were getting researched very quickly, too quickly than intended, because you probably at that point have like 20 monks in mosques, so that really does increase the speed. So the things in the Imperial Ages that are supposed to take longer, because they're the most powerful upgrades in the game, they were actually taking less and less time. So the fact that they've increased that to like say 900 seconds and 1350 seconds, that then sort of balances out that if by that point you will have a lot of mosques and a lot of monks, so that will then bring the time back down to a respectable level. Now we look at some actual buffs for the Dehli. Hardened Spearman base research, 210 seconds down to 105. Sanctity base research, 300 seconds down to 210. Herbal medicine and own blades from 300 seconds to 180 seconds and 1350 seconds to 300 seconds. So this is what I was talking about, certain upgrades that are in certain areas and meant for that era, like say the castle era. They are now going to get upgraded before you get into the next era. So they're actually quite useful. So now they're becoming more of a threat in the Middle Ages, in sort of like the Feudal Age and the Castle Age, whereas before you'd have to wait till really the Imperial Age before you could become of a threat, because it took so long to get the upgrades finished. They are now going to really be a threatening force early on. Now, one of my friends that I play with does play Dehli, and they do very well without these upgrades. So it's going to be really interesting to see how much of a threat they're going to be now the upgrades have really happened. But are we going to see more Dehli players? That is yet to be seen. But it does make them more of a threat. They've been in the quite sort of low tier. On certain maps they are quite high, like Confluence. But it's going to be really interesting to see how high they're going to go now with these upgrades. Now we look at China, the Chinese civilization. Now, one of my funnest games and worst games are all dependent on if I or the enemy Chinese player can get left alone to a point where you can win just by spamming fire lancers. You put it around the Spirit Way or your stables, so they reduce cost by 30%, and you just spam fire lancers, and then very soon you have an army of 110 fire lancers running at all your landmarks, and there's nothing really that you can do. That's not going to change. What it will change, you won't have as many coming at you, because it's gone up from 80 food, 20 wood and 20 gold to 120 food, 20 wood and 20 gold. So the food cost is going to be a hell of a lot more. Is this going to change it in the sense that it's going to stop people from playing it? No. You're going to find still that people are going to be turtling in sort of a 3v3 and 4v4 games and just getting a massive army of them, because you've still got in the dynasty where you get the granaries, you can stack up 3 granaries and stick farms around. All it'll mean is you have to probably put more villagers on food to really catch up to that 120 food upgrade. 120 food instead of 80 food. Is it going to change much for the things that it's meant for? Probably not. But what it will change is they're not going to be as of a threat to actual military units, but still to landmarks. So let's look into that. So they don't have bonus damage now to range units anymore, which is good. And the way that fire lancers work, for those that haven't experienced it yet, and I'm very lucky you're very lucky if you haven't experienced it, they charge in just like knights do in Horseman, and when they hit the unit, they explode in a sense of the end of the spear sort of explodes and does splash damage or AOE damage to other units. Now, because they have upgraded damage towards ranged, they could very easily one-shot any ranged unit. If you've got maybe 5 or 6 going in an army of sort of 10 ranged units, they could very easily one-shot them. So that bonus damage is now being removed. And then also, fire lancers, their health has been increased. Is that much of a problem? No, because they are very much like glass cannons. But their charge weapon damage, the area of effect damage, now deals 50% damage instead of 100. So what you normally find is, especially if you've got spearmen, which spearmen naturally counter horsemen, knights and fire lancers, supposedly, you've got the spearmen running in, they brace against the first couple of fire lancers, and then you've got the next army of fire lancers running in after them that will then do the damage and then just destroy all the spearmen, which are there as counters towards the lancers. Now, they don't do 100%, they do 50% damage now, so that might make it a little bit less of a threat. But if you have an army of 100, it's not going to make much of a difference. Anyway, and their torch damage has been removed. The torch damage has been reduced from 51 to 36 damage, which is actually quite a lot, because if you do have an army of 50 plus fire lancers, you could one-shot a landmark in about 6 seconds. It probably take 10 seconds instead of 6, but it's going to be. They are still going to be a threat to an extent, but they're not going to be as much of a threat. And then fire lancers in the 4th era or 4th upgrade, their health has also been increased. Their weapon damage has been reduced. Charge weapon damage has been reduced, and area of effect has also been reduced as well. And the torch damage has been reduced from 55 to 40. So those nerfs as well, big changes for the fire lancers, because they were the meta. You almost guaranteed, and I've done it before. I've said to my friends when I'm playing, right, I'm not going to do the fire lancer spam. I'm going to play properly, and then it gets to like 30 minutes. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to fire lancer spam. That's probably not going to change, but that's probably not going to change much. It's just going to probably mean that you might get a bit of diversity with China, Chinese players. The fact that you won't be able to nuke as much, and you won't be able to sort of surround. I mean, I never fought military units. I went straight for landmarks. I've always done that. The only thing that counters spearmen, the only thing that counters fire lancers are stone walls. So if you are stone walled, you're then going to have to use your fire lancers for something. That's when you start going for military units, and you can really surprise them and destroy an entire enemy's army very quickly because of this. Now the nerfs with the fire lancers, you might find a little bit of a difference in the meta. Not by much, but it's interesting to see. And that's it. So they are saying, there's a link down below on that page that says, put in your known bugs, issues or complaints. They're already starting on a February patch. So that's we know for a fact that that's going to be coming out next month now. So it's a bit of more direction in comparison to saying when is the next balance patch going to come out. So we do have a bit of a clear sort of vision on when that's coming out. But there are some big changes that are happening with this patch, and I would love to know your opinions down in the comment section down below. Is it going to change the way you play? Are you happy about some changes? Do you hate some of the changes? Are you excited about some of the changes? And how is it going to change your gameplay? So let me know in the comment section down below. And if you are watching this video as it's coming out, I am going live in an hour at 7 PM UTC, and we're going to be talking about it a little bit more, and also playing the game with its new changes, hopefully if the update comes out before then. But as always, my name is Ryfrost. If you've loved this video and you want to see more updates, and you're excited for the game and Age of Empire gameplay coming out on this channel, please hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a hell of a lot. Hit that thumbs up. Write a comment section down below how you're finding it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye bye.